Hello everyone. Today we will talk about critical reading, which is also a very important, element of your thesis and your projects. And above all, I think if you know how to do critical reading, you are able to do a good literature review, which is a very essential element whenever you are doing your thesis or whenever you are doing your project. So today we'll be talking about critical reading. What is critical reading? For example, maybe many times your teachers have given you some articles, some research papers to read and study and then write a review about it. So there is a difference between writing a review and doing a critical reading of a piece of literature. Writing a summary or a review is a different thing, and critical reading means that you are reading that literature with a critical mindset. You are trying to point out the positivities as well as the negativities of that work. And today we'll discuss different steps that are involved if you are given a research paper or you're given some literature to review critically, how you have to do it. So moving on to the first slide, the important thing is to understand what is critical reading. So the first step you have to do is you have to examine the evidence of the paper or the research paper or the literature you are given, and then you have to check out the influence on evidence. Then the third step, you have to check out the limitations of the study, because obviously no study is complete. Every study has got its own limitations and you have to check them out. Next thing is you have to examine the interpretations that have been made by the author. And the last thing is the acceptance of that literature. Now, what are these five steps? Actually, we'll discuss them in detail. Why do we need to take a critical approach to reading? It is very important. Even when children are studying something, when even you're studying a novel, when you're studying a book, when you're reading something, the best way to evaluate that piece of literature is having a critical approach toward it. Now, being critical doesn't mean that you have to start being negative about it, but being critical means that you have to evaluate all the aspects of that literature. So, the first thing is, taking this starting point, you will be ready to engage in a critical reading. And the next step is you have to consider anything you read not as a fact, but as an argument of the writer. Generally, what happens with students of MPhil, masters, and even PhD, that whatever we read, for example, if I am reading a research paper or if I am reading a book, am being influenced by the author so much that I consider that whatever the author is telling me, it's a universal truth. But actually, this is not the case. Whatever the author has written, whatever they have presented, that is their piece of work, obviously, which is based on evidence, but that is not a universal truth. You can disagree with it. You can say that I disagree, but maybe in my mindset, the things could go in another way. So you can go negative about it. And this should be your approach. This should be the approach of a student. I have seen many students who are so much influenced by somebody's work that they somehow change the direction of their own research, after being getting so much influence. So just read whatever you are reading as an argument of the writer. It is not a universal truth. It is not a fact. The third step is step into the academic debate and to make sure, make your own evaluation of how much you are willing to accept what you read. Whenever you're reading something, just try to read it with an open mindset. That is very important. And the next step is every decision of author is a potential topic for examination and debate rather than for blind acceptance. Again, the same thing, whatever you are reading doesn't mean that that author has written some universal truth. I mean, you have to go behind the words, you have to go behind the meanings, you have to explore. Maybe what he has written is partially true. Maybe there is some exaggeration in the paper. Maybe there is some exaggeration in the literature. Maybe he needs a strong evidence. You have to, go about it. Next is critical reading does not have to be all negative. Now, another important thing, that if I have told you that you have to critically evaluate something, doesn't mean that it has to be negative all the time. Because the aim of critical reading is not to find fault, but to assess the strength of the evidence and the argument. And the next step is, it is just as useful to conclude that a study or an article presents very strong evidence and a well-reasoned argument as it is to identify the studies or articles that are weak. So just don't go about, saying everything is negative and everything is wrong. This shouldn't be the case in critical reading. Now, what is an evidence? Evidence in a research paper or evidence in a book is actually, the information on measurements, timing, equipment, control of extraneous factors, and careful following of standard procedures that are being followed during the research procedure. And then evidence may include items such as quotes from interviews, extracts of text, diagrams showing how themes might connect with each other. So you have to check that as well. Now, what is an evidence when you are reading a research paper? It is report of the context, it is choice of the method, it is audit trail for data analysis, it is rationale for the interpretations and conclusion, and it is use of the theoretical perspective. So whenever you're writing a summary or a critical review of a research paper that your teacher has given to you, first you have to report the context, then you have to find out what is the method that is being opted in that research paper. It can be a survey, it can be a content analysis, it can be an experiment. Then how the data was analyzed, then what was the rationale of the interpretations and conclusion that was made. And then finally, you also have to check that the theoretical perspective that has been adopted for this particular study, was it the right theoretical perspective or not? Then you have to link the evidence to the argument of the author, that why the author considered then that what they did was worth doing, why it was worth doing, and why the data collected or the material selected were the most appropriate, and how the conclusions drawn link to the wider context of the inquiry. These are all the questions that you have to ask yourself actually when you're evaluating a research paper or you're evaluating a piece of literature. And the final thing is note taking. Whenever you are writing a critical review or a review or a summary of something that you have been assigned, or you're writing a literature review for your own thesis, the most important thing is note taking. I have seen many students who say that I have studied 4 research papers today or 5 research papers today, and I have absorbed so much, but they haven't taken a single note. So when you haven't taken a single note, that means all is wasted. It is not written anywhere. So whenever you are, gathering the data, when you're gathering the information, you're collecting the information, it is very important to write down your notes on MS Word, or if you are used to with writing them in your notebooks with your hand. So that is up to you. But note taking is very important. Otherwise, you will miss a lot of important information that will be actually very helpful for you in jolting down this critical reading. Here we go. This is the end of a short lecture on how to do critical reading of literature. And this PowerPoint of mine is a part of my PhD work, and it is available on my ResearchGate account. So you can just check my ResearchGate account. These are free to use for all the students. So you can just use them for academic purpose, or you can, if you want some guidance, you can always take the guidance from these presentations. You can download them from ResearchGate, and my account ID on ResearchGate is Barira Bakhtawa. So you can just go there and download them. I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have, and I'll be seeing you next time with a new subject. So till then, take good care of yourselves, and bye-bye.